Hello, everyone. My name is Wally Hauck with Communico, Senior Vice President for Communico. We specialize in creating exceptional service cultures. And so I'm delighted to be joined today by a good colleague and a wonderful friend, Lori Lehan. Lori is an experienced human resource professional, and with over 30 years of experience, she's demonstrated her ability to plan, develop, monitor, assess, and improve all aspects of human resources. And what I really appreciate about Lori being here to help us with our leadership series is that human resource perspective is so valuable. And I can't hardly wait to ask her a couple of questions about leadership. She holds knowledge and expertise in numerous areas, including acquisitions, asset recovery, budgeting, consulting, customer service, employee relations, human resources, insurance, litigation, organizational skills, presentation skills, project management, proposal writing, recruiting. She's currently Vice President of Human Resources for Greater Hartford YMCA and an adjunct professor for Central Connecticut State University. So, Lori, welcome. And again, I'm very excited to ask about leadership from your perspective. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's good to see you.
All right, good to see you too. So, we're going to have a little discussion here. Let me just start off, and uh, again, I'm repeating myself, but uh, the human resource perspective on leadership, I would suggest, is incredibly valuable for any aspiring leaders and um, helping to navigate all of the human resource issues and responsibilities. And, and leadership is so critical with regard to that. And of course, our company touches on that with regard to creating customer experience. So, help us with how would you characterize the key skills and characteristics that, from your perspective, that a leader must have for creating success in an organization?
Sure. I would say the top three for me would be courage, integrity, and humility. That a leader needs to demonstrate the courage to speak up and to be a role model to others, to have integrity to always do the right thing, even when it's hard. And that's why that courage is so important. And by humility, I don't necessarily mean that uh, someone has to always be humble. Although I think being humble is important in making sure that you recognize the contributions of others. What I mean by that is to have enough confidence to make decisions, but yet have enough humility to understand that other perspectives might give you a different view on a problem or a way to solve it. And so, no one person has all the right answers, and we come up with better solutions when we work together.
Wow, boy, that one was a curveball. I didn't expect you to, and I don't mean it this way, but no one has said humility like that, and it just really resonates with me. You're absolutely right. That humility piece is so critical. Let's talk a little bit more about that. How could we add? What are some of the behaviors that we might see in a leader that has humility, the right amount of humility? You don't want to have too much, right? And you don't want to have too little. You want to have just, a little Red Riding Hood amount, right? So, how would we recognize that? And do you have some examples or behaviors that you could talk about?
I think for me, the biggest behavior there is to try and be as inclusive as possible when we have to make decisions. So we have competing priorities there, right? Because oftentimes we have to make quick decisions. People are waiting on us, and we don't always have or perceive that we have the time to stop and ask the different stakeholders how they might solve that problem or help us with that. And yet at the same time, I think it's so critically important. So the behavior I would look for is, does this person bring together diverse groups of people to look at different problems and find ways to solve them? So that would be a key behavior that I would seek.
Okay. Okay. Sure. So bringing together the people who need to contribute or buy into it,
Mhm.
and do, well, that requires there's some challenges to that, right? Because if you have to
Absolutely.
make quick decisions,
Hmm.
how do you balance that as a leader? If you have to make quick decisions, yet you want to involve others, and uh, put forth this impression of humility. How uh, talk about from your experience how that might have worked in the past, or how a leader might have gotten over that barrier, if you will.
Sure. So I think it depends on the situation at hand and how quickly you really do need to move. Sometimes, from the HR perspective, we're talking about uh, something that affects the entire organization or large groups of people, that maybe you're looking at an initiative. Maybe there's already something in place, you want to improve it. So that's not the kind of thing that you necessarily have to do tomorrow. So I would always stop before making a decision and say, when does this decision have to be made? How quickly do I have to move? And do I have the time to bring people in? And then if the answer is I have time to bring people in, but I better move pretty quickly on it, then the way I might communicate, would change. So maybe it's not calling a big meeting. Maybe it's sending out a group email saying, hey, can you take a look at this? I'm thinking about doing this. Here's a draft that I put together of whatever it may be. Can you put some eyes on this? And I have found throughout my career that there is always a group of people who, no matter how busy they are, they really appreciate being asked, and they'll take the time to give you that feedback. And so
Yes.
finding those people is also really important.
Okay, so that's really helpful. I'm going to throw you a curveball. Here's my experience with regard to human resource leaders: is they're often uh, doing cleanup. They're doing cleanup on things that leaders do that make a mess. Am I wrong about that? That almost sounds disrespectful. But is that fair to say that uh, the human resource department is often doing cleanup on poor leadership or poor leadership decisions? And if yes, do you have some examples of that? I know I'm putting you on the spot with that.
Yeah, you sure are. I would say HR often cleans up the messes of the previous HR, and that for a variety of reasons, and or of leaders. Some of the examples I can think of are typically around employment decisions when it comes to HR, and reacting with emotion as opposed to being intentional and taking a step back from a decision. And oftentimes it's those reactions and those emotional pieces that end up leaving a mess in an organization.
Okay, let's talk about that just a little bit more.
Mhm.
My question there is, tell us more about the emotional reaction and what you might recommend for leaders to avoid creating a mess like that.
Sure. I would say, in my experience, when a leader is working with an employee that is challenging for whatever reason, it starts to become personal. And sometimes they internalize the actions or reactions of the person on their team. And so uh, they tend to not address issues early on. They fester, and then they end up getting really frustrated, and then have an emotional response or reaction that perhaps doesn't necessarily align directly with the situation at hand.
Aha. So the term that came to mind as you were talking is emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
Would you agree that I don't want to be too leading with this question. Tell us about the importance of emotional intelligence then for leaders.
Well, emotional intelligence is obviously incredibly important because being able to monitor and know your own actions and reactions and being able to temper them is important. I would also say, Wally, beyond, another aspect of that is many times leaders are working under extreme stress and pressure, and they don't necessarily prioritize problems when they're small because they're small, and that I don't think is necessarily always a result of emotional intelligence. That the fact that it gets to a bigger issue down the road, I think it's time, calendar management, uh, avoiding difficult conversations, as we know people do.
Yes.
So that those are the ties to me to emotional intelligence. Are you willing to have those difficult conversations with people before something becomes a much bigger problem? And then if something is a big problem, how are you reacting to that? And are you checking yourself before you react and respond?
Amazing advice, Lori. Thank you so very much for that insight. Again, I was really looking forward to that human resource side, and I know the participants in our leadership group are going to be really interested in hearing what you had to say. So, thank you so much again for being with us, and God bless. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you.